Hello and welcome back to the COVID Wellness Support Program. Today we're going to be talking all about sleep. We're going to talk about the different stages of sleep. We're going to talk about good sleep habits that can help increase the sleep quality that you're currently getting. We're going to talk about some bad sleep habits that might be interfering with the quality of sleep that you are currently getting. We're going to talk about nightmares and night terrors and why those show up and what to do about them when they do. We're going to discuss some different treatment options that might be available to you, and we're going to learn a skill that will hopefully help you fall asleep quickly this evening. So in terms of sleep, concerns and difficulties with sleep itself is actually remarkably common. About half of the population reports difficulties with either falling asleep and or staying asleep. And 1 in 3 Canadians reports getting less than the recommended amount of sleep on a daily basis. Interestingly, though, worrying about sleep is one of the most common perpetuating factors of any sleep difficulty. We, interestingly though, spend about a third of our lives asleep. So learning how to get really good sleep actually makes a huge difference in our lives because we spend so much of them sleeping. And people differ in the amount of sleep that they actually require, right? Most people fall into that 7 to 8 hour range. However, some require as little as 4, some need as much as 12 hours. Personally, I'm a 9-hour-a-night person so that I can wake up feeling rested and ready to take on my day the next day. It's all about figuring out what works for you and your body. However, regardless of what the right number is for you, it is really important that we do get sleep. 18 hours of being awake is actually equivalent to us having a blood alcohol level of 0.05. So the same symptoms that you would get from being mildly intoxicated, right? That maybe you're a bit clumsier, you're sleepy, you have difficulty paying attention, right? We see that with increased amounts or durations of being awake. So same as you wouldn't want to show up to work intoxicated, you also don't want to show up to work with limited amounts of sleep because we're actually making similar errors in judgment. Now there are 4 phases of sleep that we're going to discuss in the next slide here, stages 1 through 3 and REM sleep. And our body cycles through them naturally once every about 90 minutes or 5 to 6 times every night. Now the stages of sleep. So stage 1 is the very lightest level of sleep. This is often if you yourself fall asleep on the couch while you're watching TV, or maybe your partner does, right? And you maybe wake them up and they say, I wasn't sleeping, or this happens to you, I wasn't sleeping. This is stage 1 sleep. It often doesn't even feel like we're sleeping at this point in time. We're still kind of aware of maybe what's going on around us, but we are actually asleep. Now, as we progress into stage 2, this is where we start to actually feel like we're asleep. Our heart rate slows, our breathing slows, we start to kind of get into that calmer state, right? We're able to start relaxing our body. And as we progress through stage 2 into stage 3, this is where we get that really great quality deep sleep, okay? So in this area, our heart rate is the slowest it's going to be, our breathing is the slowest it's going to be, our body temperature actually drops a little bit. And the stage 3 sleep is really where we get that good quality restorative sleep. And then we move into REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. This is where we dream. This is where our eyes are moving behind our eyelids as we're sleeping. If you've ever seen somebody do that, that's during this stage. And this is actually our body speeds up because we're dreaming. So our breathing quickens, our heart rate quickens, right? Our body is reacting accordingly to the fact that it's processing a lot of information in this stage. And so the average adult, through these different stages, actually awakens about 15 to 20 times every night. But we don't often remember these awakenings. They're usually quite brief, less than 15 seconds, kind of a quick wake up, roll over, and go right back to sleep. And we usually don't remember doing this at all. Now, this point is going to be really important for later on in today's topic. And sleep has this restorative function. Like I talked about, that stage, the 3 sleep is really where our body and mind recover from the day and get ready for tomorrow. And this tends to happen the most in the early part of our sleeping, the first half of our night, so to speak. Now, the REM sleep is really important for things like memory consolidation and processing information and learning. This is essentially where our brain is digesting the information that we gathered that day, and it's working hard to store it and put it away appropriately. So each stage has its own unique, special part of sleep, and all are equally important. But that really deep sleep, that restorative sleep, is that stage 3, and that's that good quality sleep that we're looking for. Now, if we're experiencing heightened levels of stress in our lives, or if we're experiencing hyperarousal, where we're feeling like we're just on all of the time, we're stressed all of the time, it can be really difficult to actually get to and then stay in those stage 3 parts of sleep. Our body doesn't gravitate naturally towards it. It's difficult to get there. And because we have trouble getting there, we're restoring our body less and less, which, as we've talked about, impacts our ability to manage day-to-day life, right? If we're tired, if we're, having that, the similarities to that blood alcohol level of 0.05, right, it's difficult to take part in daily life. And this perpetuates this cycle. So, right, we don't get a good sleep. We wake up the next day. We're not feeling great. We're not able to handle stressors as well. And then because we're more stressed, we again have that difficult night's sleep, right? So this perpetuating cycle can actually cause a lot of problems for people in these heightened periods of stress. The nice thing is we can do something about this, and I'll show you as we continue on. So the first thing that's really important to know about getting good quality sleep is we actually have something called a sleep drive. And essentially what a sleep drive is it's your drive to sleep that builds during the day as we do things, and then it wanes again as we sleep, right? The more we sleep, the less sleep drive we have. So as we do more through our day, increase our activity, whether it's physical or cognitive activity, we actually increase a thing called adenosine, which is a chemical in our body that helps us sleep, and we increase our sleep drive so that when we go to bed, we're able to actually get that good quality sleep. The trick is the opposite of this is also true. With decreased activity during the day, whether it's physical or cognitive activity, so if we're lazing around, we're not doing very much, we're not engaging in very much activity, we don't build as much of this adenosine in our body, and we don't have a very high sleep drive when we go to bed that night. I like to think of it a bit as a sleep bank, so to speak. The more activity that we do during the day, again, whether it's physical or cognitive activity, essentially the more money we put into the bank as we build through our day. And the nice thing is, if we've got all this money in the bank when we go to bed, we can buy really good quality sleep, and we can get that deep sleep through that night and wake up feeling great the next morning. However, if we don't do very much during the day, if we have really decreased activity, we're not doing very much, we don't put very much money into the bank. And what that means is when we go to bed that night, we don't have very much money to buy that good quality sleep, and we're not going to get it. Okay? So think about right now what your day-to-day looks like, and are you doing kind of enough during your day to build up maybe that sleep bank or that sleep drive so that you're able to get that good quality sleep on a nightly basis? A really key piece of this is that sleep quality is not the same as sleep quantity. So just because maybe you're actually in bed for 12 hours, maybe you're only actually getting a very small proportion of that in that deep restorative sleep that we've talked about, right? And that's not going to be helpful. We need those longer periods and that restorative sleep and that REM sleep for us to wake up feeling rejuvenated and able to pay attention and concentrate the next day. Now, the effects of sleep deprivation, like we talked about, that blood alcohol level of 0.05, you're not actually intoxicated, but similar symptoms, right? They present here on this slide as well. So we can have relatively minor symptoms, things like you might be a little bit clumsy, maybe a bit more irritable, right? We all know what it feels like when you didn't get a good night's sleep, how you wake up the next morning, you're a bit grumpier, maybe your kids or your dog stays farther away from you than usual, right? But these can actually build and get more and more severe the greater our sleep deprivation is, right? So it can go on to cause things like anxiety and depression. We see decreased abilities to handle stress. We can see weight gain and weight loss, but it can get quite severe as well, right? We can start seeing things like an increase in blood pressure, right? Increased risk of illness, increased risk of diabetes, right? All these health concerns can start to compile on top of each other as a result of sleep deprivation. And if you remember, about half of the population is having trouble sleeping. So my bet is this is probably happening or has happened to you at some point in your life. Okay? And so it's really important to take note of what can go sideways when we have poor sleep, so that we know how important it is to get good sleep, and we can know what we need to do to get it. Now, there are some medical problems that do get in the way of sleep that I want to address briefly. So obstructive sleep apnea, this does occur in a small percentage of the population, and this is where you kind of stop and start breathing throughout the night due to muscles relaxing in your nose and mouth and throat. This, if you have a partner that's saying, oh gee, you snore a lot, or maybe you're waking up and you're really dry in your mouth and your throat, or maybe you've actually woken up and felt like you were not breathing, if any of these are sounding true to you, or if you think that you might have this, again, I really encourage you to talk to your family doctor about this, because there may be other options out there for you to help resolve this so that you can get back to getting that good sleep. And there are things like restless leg syndrome. This is that feeling, that urge to move when you kind of lie down or you sit down and you're stationary for a while. And lastly, pain conditions, right? So if you have chronic pain especially, it can be really difficult to get comfortable so that you're able to actually fall asleep and get that good sleep. So if these are applying to you, again, I really do encourage you to talk to your general practitioner and see what other treatment options might be available for you so that you can help resolve some of these issues to get back to getting that good sleep. There's some other concerns that come up with sleep that I want to address as well. The first one here is really important for basically everybody that works in healthcare or in a frontline capacity, and that is the circadian rhythm sleep disorder. Now, these are sleep issues that arise due to disruption of somebody's natural circadian rhythm, that natural wake and sleep cycle that we all have, and a big component of this is shift work. So if you are a healthcare worker that works with shift work, this may apply to you, okay? It's really hard for the body to naturally fall into a rhythm when that rhythm is constantly being changed, okay? And there might be some better options out there, especially if you're talking to your family doctor, of things that you might be able to do, medication that might be required so that you're able to stick with getting that good quality sleep despite dysregulating that cycle. We also have things like sleepwalking and sleep paralysis that comes up as well. And these actually exist kind of similarly, but for different reasons. So sleepwalking tends to occur during our REM cycle of sleep. And during our REM cycle of sleep, our body naturally freezes our muscles so that as we're dreaming and as we're essentially thinking and processing all this information, we don't act out what we're actually dreaming. In sleepwalking, this function within our body is essentially defective. It's not working the same way that it's supposed to, and it doesn't freeze our muscles the way that it naturally does. And so instead of lying still and dreaming, your body is actually getting up and doing these different things that are in your dreams. Now, sleep paralysis is the other end of the spectrum. So that natural ability that our body has to freeze our muscles while we're sleeping either kicks on too early or stays too long. So essentially we're waking up from sleep and we're ready to be up, but our body is still frozen. And this is just because this natural part of our body is taking too long to turn off. And lastly, we're going to talk in more detail about nightmares and night terrors. So nightmares, to clarify, there is a difference between the two, are frightening dreams, and they often occur at the end of your REM cycle, the end of that dreaming period. And because they occur right at the end of that REM cycle, basically where we're coming back into that stage 1 sleep, that really light level sleep, they can often wake us up. And if they wake us up, we generally remember these nightmares because they're scary, right? They stick with us. They're very common for people with any type of trauma or anxiety, right? The more stress that we have built in our system, and especially with trauma where we maybe have some unresolved memories and experiences that we haven't gotten a chance to work through, those will often present as nightmares in our dreams. Now, night terrors, on the other hand, are different. These are also frightening dreams, but they're also more dramatic usually than nightmares. And unlike nightmares, these occur typically in the transition between stage 3 and REM sleep. And because they occur in this transition period, if you remember, stage 3 is that really deep sleep. And because they occur right there, it's actually really hard to wake somebody up during it because we're so far asleep at that point in time. But because we're still in that stage 3 and we haven't progressed fully to that REM sleep yet, our body often hasn't had a chance to turn off basically all of our muscles so that we don't act anything out at that point in time. This is where you'll get things like people that scream, or they might sit up, they might sleepwalk. You're going to see a lot more physical bodily reactions to night terrors than you would a nightmare. And again, it is really difficult to wake people up during this period, and often that's actually for the best because they're not remembered. These night terrors are often forgotten because they occur while we're so asleep, we're not even remotely close to waking and remembering that we had them. However, if you do awaken during a nightmare or a night terror, there are some different things that we can do. So, right, maybe you don't normally experience nightmares or night terrors and you just have increased stress in your life. You have some more things that are going on, or maybe you do have unresolved trauma, right? And it's presenting itself more regularly for you. Regardless of why it's showing up, there's a couple things that we want to flag both to do and not to do when this is the case. First of all, we encourage you to not increase your drug or alcohol use. While this might be tempting at times, this actually makes sleep concerns worse. So a lot of people, right, it's pretty common to hear, well, I'll have a glass of wine or scotch before bed because it helps me fall asleep. And that might be true, right? It might make you sleepy and you might fall asleep. But again, remember that sleep quality and sleep quantity are not the same thing. And what we see with people that have alcohol, especially right before bed, is they actually have a much lower quality of sleep throughout the night than they would otherwise. And like we've talked about, with that decreased quality of sleep, we're seeing decreased stress tolerance throughout the next day, and this cycle begins again and again. So again, if you're experiencing nightmares or night terrors, do not increase your drug or alcohol use. This will only essentially make things worse. The second point to this is we encourage you to not avoid going to bed. Sometimes when the bed seems stressful, whether it's because you're worried about having a nightmare or night terror, or because you're worried about the fact that you might not be able to fall asleep and it's stressful and uncomfortable to be there, sometimes people avoid going to bed altogether, right? They'll stay up really late, they won't go to bed, they'll fall asleep on the couch, right? They'll do a whole variety of different things. Again, unfortunately, not going to bed, you're depriving your body of its own ability to do what it knows how to do. It needs to sleep. It needs to get that opportunity to do it. And if we're taking that away, we're taking away the body's opportunity to restore itself, to process information, to do all the wonderful things that sleep does for us. And so again, I would encourage you, even though it might seem a bit nerve-wracking at times to actually go to bed, please still do so. Please give your body a chance to actually get that sleep. We're going to talk about more strategies that you can use when you're there to help fall asleep. So, if you awaken from a nightmare or a night terror, there are a couple things that you can do to help yourself. The first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to ground ourselves in the present moment. So I'm sure we've all had those dreams where we wake up and we're disorientated and we don't know where we are or what's going on or anything like that. So we want to bring the focus back to we are here, I'm in my bed, and I am safe, right? Those are the messages that we want to give our body. There's a few ways that we can do this. The first is that we can use our senses to locate ourselves in our room. And we're going to talk about an exercise that we can do in detail in just a moment here that involves exactly that. We can also place photos of familiar things or people that we care about next to our bed, so that when we wake up and we're disorientated, that's what we see. We see this person that we care about right there, right next to us. We can also use an object. If there's an object of significance for you that brings you calm or comfort or happiness, feel free to put that next to your bed as well. Seeing that can often be enough to ground you back into your present moment. The last one sounds a little bit funny here, but we can use scented oils. This can be really helpful because they're often very strong scents, right? If you unscrew that thing and you take a whiff, it's usually quite a strong, powerful scent. Citrus is a great one for this, and it essentially snaps you right out of where you were. So if you were in a nightmare or a night terror and you need to just quickly get yourself out of it, you can smell a really strong smell, and that essentially overpowers your senses and brings you right back into the present moment. Okay? If you're unable to return to sleep after a nightmare or night terror, or even if you get into bed and you're unable to sleep, we do not want you to struggle in bed. So remember what we talked about in the last session. Our brain learns by repeatedly doing something over and over and over again. So if our brain learns that we go to bed just to struggle to be in bed, that's what it's going to do. We're going to go to bed and we're going to keep struggling. What we need to train the brain is that the bed is for sleeping. That is what we need to do there. And so in this context, if we're unable to get to sleep within 30 minutes, I want you to get up. Get up, get out of bed, don't struggle there. Go and do something calm outside of the bedroom. You can read, something quiet, listen to music, and when you're tired, come back and try again, okay? We're training the brain to not struggle in the bed. In terms of nightmares, there are a couple other skills we can use. So if you're having regular nightmares, especially kind of a reoccurring one that seems to be the same thing over and over again, I would encourage you to write it down and actually write a different ending to the nightmare. Again, what we're doing is we're showing the brain that there's an alternative path that it can take. And so by repeatedly doing this, we're showing this is the story, this is the ending that I actually want. And we can change how scary that nightmare is into something more positive that we're ultimately able to sleep through. You can practice relaxation techniques. We're going to go through one at the end of today's session. And you can maintain a regular sleep ritual, which we'll get more into in just a moment here. So the grounding practice that I mentioned using all of your senses is a really great one for bringing yourself back into the present moment. This is a really great one for sleep. So if you're having trouble, if you're anxious, if you're worried while you're sleeping, this is also a really great one if you're ever just nervous anywhere. You can bring yourself back into the present moment. So if you're prepping for a job interview, if you're waiting to have, a performance review with a boss, or you have a big meeting coming up, you can use this in all of those contexts. We're going to use our senses to remind ourselves of where we actually are and that we're safe where we are. It's called the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. So you're going to start by naming 5 things that you can see around you. So for me right now, I see some chairs, some artwork on the wall, I see the plants behind me, there's some books back there, and I see the chair that I'm sitting on. Fantastic. 5 different things. And I say them out loud if I can. If you're in a public place and you don't want to say them out loud, perfectly okay. You can just say them in your mind. But if you can, say them out loud. It helps to actually orientate yourself. Next thing is 4 different things you can actually feel. And I want you to touch these things. So for me right now, I can touch my blazer, the chair, I can touch my pants, I can feel the cushion that I'm sitting on. If you're in your bed, this might be your pillow, the nightside table, your sheets, your own pajamas, your partner if you have one, okay? Then I want you to name 3 different things that you can hear. So as I'm sitting here, I hear a fan, I hear myself talking, there's a door out there that I can hear every now and then. If you're in bed, it's a bit trickier, right? Especially at night, especially if you're somewhere more rural. This gets a bit tricky, so I want you to actually take a moment and really focus. Is there a bit of a wind outside? Is there a bird? Can you hear your own breathing? Maybe the breathing of a partner or a pet that's in your room? Can you hear a clock ticking? Right? Paying attention to those subtle sounds. If you're in the city, there might be much more around you, and that's great. But I want you to really hone in and think about what you can hear at that point in time. 2, I'm going to get you to name 2 things that you can smell. So these start to get trickier and trickier as we go. So if you're in your bed, this might be something like your detergent for your sheets. Can you still smell some of that? Or maybe this is a good reminder that maybe you need to wash your sheets. Another option would be if you can smell maybe your shampoo, maybe you showered before bed. Maybe your partner or your pet has a distinct smell. Noticing what those are. And lastly, one thing that you can taste. So again, if you're sleeping, especially if this is early in the night, maybe you're tasting toothpaste or mouthwash still, right? Maybe later in the evening, it's not such a great taste that's in your mouth, and that's okay too. Whatever it is, I just want you to notice it and name it. The nice thing is by working through and bringing all of your senses into play, you can remind yourself of where you currently are. You're not actually in that nightmare. You're not actually the stress that you've been worrying about. You are safe. Where you are right now is okay, and you are safe. Now, jumping back into some of the contributors of sleep disturbances, so why you might be awake in the first place. So first of all, we have that negative self-talk, right? So we talked about this a lot of these sleep problems are perpetuated by worrying about sleep. And we're going to talk about this in more detail in just a moment, but that idea of like, oh, I'm never going to get to sleep. Or, oh, if I fall asleep now, I'll get, 7 hours of sleep. Well, if I fall asleep now, I'll get 6.5 hours of sleep, right? I'm sure we've all been there at some point in time. By having this negative self-talk in our mind, we're essentially just building our stress, right? We're contributing to it over and over and over again, and we're getting in the way of the body's natural ability to sleep. Our lifestyle can also get in the way of our ability to sleep. So things like high caffeine intake during the day, I know especially with healthcare, especially if you're working shift work, this can be almost a necessity at times. Do your best to try and minimize your caffeine intake while still being safe within the workplace. Alcohol, as we've already talked about, and electronic use can also increase sleep disturbances and decrease your ability to fall asleep. I'm sure most of you now have heard about the blue light and how it actually stimulates our brain and it keeps us awake. There are some, blue light screens. The trick with that is actually even with those on, we still find that electronics tend to keep us up and tend to increase our sleep disturbances. So a safe bet is just no electronics before bed. And then little to no exercise or poor diet. So this really plays into that sleep drive or that sleep bank that we were talking about. Increased exercise and a better diet helps us build our sleep drive throughout the day so that we're able to get that good quality sleep at night. The environment that we're in is also very important. So having the correct room temperature can make a big difference. So if it's too hot, I'm sure we've all been there where we've just been, sweaty and uncomfortable all night. Too cold also gets in the way of our sleeping as well. We actually want to have, a nice neutral temperature where we're comfortable and even maybe a few degrees cooler than that because our body naturally cools as we sleep. And so if we're able to help it do that, we can help it get better quality sleep. Having a really good mattress and bedding is also really important so we're able to be comfortable and making sure we're decreasing any ambient lighting as we're able, or maybe using a blindfold if you're in the city and it's difficult to do so. And daytime napping. Now, I'm going to put a caveat in with this. While people with a regular sleep cycle, this applies to them. So daytime napping, we do not want to nap after 1 p.m. Napping after 1 p.m. can interrupt our natural circadian rhythm and get in the way of us getting that good quality sleep at night. If you are a shift worker, this does not apply to you. I really want to stress this point. It is important that you get your sleep where you are able to get your sleep, okay? Again, I would encourage you to chat with your doctor about what might be the best way for you to do so, but making sure that if you have an opportunity to nap, if you're on shift work, it's more important to get that sleep in the first place. Another one here is poor or inconsistent sleep habits or rituals. So if you're kind of going to bed at different times all the time and you're not following kind of the same routine before you go to bed, our body doesn't learn naturally when it's supposed to sleep. So we're kind of depriving it of almost like the warm-up period before you go to bed. We're going to talk more about that in a minute here. Being hyper-aroused or overstimulated. So we're trying to calm the body before we're going to bed. So we're trying to avoid things that kind of get us all revved up. So things like, anything that's going to give us anxiety. So maybe watching the news right now, we don't want to avoid that before bed. Violent video games, difficult conversations with a partner, right? We want to avoid any of that right before bed because we're trying to be as calm as we possibly can in going to bed. And trying too hard to fall asleep. So this is a really key piece. I know we're talking right now about the importance of getting to sleep and getting that good quality sleep, but we essentially want to get out of the way of our body doing what it knows what it needs to do. So if we're thinking there, I need to get to sleep, all we're doing is increasing that anxiety and we're decreasing our ability to actually turn everything off and go to sleep. And we're starting to associate our bed with that stress, right? We're trying to associate our bed with sleep. So we need it to be calm while we get there, okay? Our brain and body knows what it needs to do, so we just need to get out of the way and let it do it. Now, what I mentioned before in terms of this thought process that we'll often see with, over worrying about sleep is this cycle between the thoughts, the feelings, and behaviors. And I mentioned this once before that they all seem to be connected. So if we have this concept of, I'll never get to sleep, and I'm sure even as I just said that, you probably even maybe felt something inside of you, and it probably wasn't great, right? If you think about lying in bed and having that thought, right? Maybe you're frustrated, you're irritated, you're annoyed. I'm sure you can imagine if you're having those emotions, what your body does, right? It maybe tenses up, it's annoyed, you're maybe rolling around in bed, you're not comfortable, you get tense and you get sore. And this kind of perpetuates this cycle, right? If we're tense and we're sore and we're rolling around and we're, not calm, we're probably not going to fall asleep. And so we're essentially confirming this thought, I'm never going to fall asleep. And it just continues in this cycle again and again and again. The really great thing with this cycle, or when we use things like cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, is that we're able to target these thoughts. So the thought of, I'm never going to get to sleep, is probably not 100% true, right? You're probably going to sleep at some point. We don't know exactly when, but it's probably going to happen. And cognitive behavioral therapy really focuses on changing some of these thoughts around our sleep so that we're able to reduce the behaviors and feelings that go along with them, right? So instead of having the thought, I'm never going to get to sleep, we can change it for something that's maybe more accurate. Something like, well, I'm not asleep now, but I know I will be, right? Or I know I'm going to. I know I'll get there, okay? And that's probably more accurate, right? Because in all reality, you're probably going to fall asleep at some point. No, you're not there yet, but you're going to get there. So if you even think about kind of saying that to yourself in bed, I'm not asleep yet, but I will be, right? How does that feel in your body? At least for me, when I say it, it feels more okay, right? It's kind of more of a fact, right? It's like, okay, yeah, I'll get there. All right. My body is calmer. I'm not really inclined to kind of toss and turn as much. And because my body's calmer, I'm giving it that opportunity to fall asleep and essentially confirm that new thought, right? Hey, I actually was able to get to sleep, just like I told myself. I knew it was going to happen, and it happened, okay? And this is the cycle that we want to change. This is the cycle that we want to impact and that we're able to do through things like cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. So getting back into these good sleep habits that we can bring in to increase that good quality sleep, in addition to maybe changing some of our thought processes around sleep itself, we can do things like developing a consistent sleep ritual. So what we want to do is we want to kind of almost preview sleep. We can give our brain a trailer, so to speak, getting it prepared for the fact that it knows it's going to be going to bed. And we can do this by building the same routine on a nightly basis. So whether that for you is, a bath or a shower, whether you engage in some type of relaxation activity before bed, keeping consistent timing that you're going to bed is really key. And just making sure you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. Maybe you read before bed, right? We're trying to avoid that electronic use, so making sure that we're staying away from that. But listening to something like a podcast is okay, right? Maybe you're listening to a meditation on your phone. All of that is great. But whatever it is, we just want it to be consistent. And again, same as we talked about before, right? We're building these pathways within the brain. So if we're doing the same thing over and over and over again, our brain is able to learn that, we just showered and now we're listening to this meditation. That means I'm going to go to sleep in 20 minutes, right? You're giving your brain that opportunity, that heads up notice, so that you're able to decrease that amount of time that you're sitting in bed not sleeping. We already talked about creating that comfortable location, so making sure there's, as little ambient lighting as possible, the temperature is right, it's not too noisy if you live in the city and maybe need some earplugs, that's okay too, and making sure that you're comfortable where you are. We're wanting to make sure that we're decreasing any external stimuli at that point in time. We're keeping it as kind of your bedroom is a sacred place for sleep and intimacy. Those are the two things that we want going on in that room. So no phones, no TVs, no laptops, just for sleep. And again, we're not going to force ourselves to sleep if we can't. Okay, so we don't want to struggle in bed. If we're not tired, we're going to get up, we're going to go do something calm, come back when we're tired, and try again. And you can keep doing this as many times as possible, but we just need to train the brain that the bed is for sleep or intimacy only. And don't watch the clock. All this does is it increases that anxiety. I'm sure, like I said, we've all been there, I'll get 7 hours now if I fall asleep. I'll get 6.5 now if I fall asleep, right? Just as I'm saying that, I'm sure that induces a little bit of anxiety and frustration. So making sure we're not doing that, because the ultimate goal is to stay calm and safe while we're in our bed. Now, the other side of good sleep habits happens in the morning, and this can actually be just as important as what we do before we go to bed. So first of all, we want to have a consistent wake-up time. Now, unfortunately, this does apply to weekends and days off as well. Again, if you're on shift work, this is a different story. But if you're able to maintain a regular sleep cycle, you want to be getting up at the same time every day. And what this does is it gives you an opportunity, it gives your brain the opportunity to adjust the same way as we have the sleep routine at the nighttime, where your brain now knows, okay, 20 minutes, I need to go to bed. Your brain is able to gauge accordingly, okay, it's been 7 hours, it's been 8 hours, whatever it is, I need to wake up. You're training your brain exactly how long it has to get that sleep so that you're able to get all that good quality sleep within that time frame. As soon as that alarm goes off, you want to get up and get out of bed and go and do something. You don't want to hit that snooze button. I know how tempting it is. But what that does is it essentially, by hitting the snooze button, you're training your brain that it gets this wonderful, long, lengthy period to wake up. And essentially what that does is it makes us feel groggy in the morning, right? We don't really wake up feeling rested because our brain's only half on. We're not really ready to go. But if we get up and get right out of bed every day, our brain learns with time that it needs to be on from the moment that it's up. And what this does, if you can even imagine, if you woke up tomorrow and your brain was just on and you were ready to go, you probably feel pretty good. You probably feel really energized and ready to go and take on your day. And so this is something that takes practice, and I know that it's something that, pun intended, doesn't happen overnight. But with that practice and with that training of getting right out of bed first thing in the morning, we actually can increase not only our sleep quality, but our energy levels during the day. And to do so, I know it can be hard to get out of bed. It's often nice to reward yourself with an enjoyable activity when you first get up in the morning. So for some people, this might be just that wonderful, nice hot shower first thing in the morning. Could be as simple as giving yourself 5 minutes of undisrupted time where you just enjoy your cup of coffee. Maybe you read a chapter of a book, right? Whatever that is for you, it's totally fine. But give yourself something to look forward to. Give yourself that motivation to get out of bed and start your day off on the right foot. You can also use iPhone or iPod apps. Things like the CBTI Coach app gives you an opportunity to use some of the skills we've been talking about and track your sleep so that you're able to see where you could benefit from further improvement. During the daytime, we can make some changes as well. So like we already talked about, limiting your caffeine intake, limiting your alcohol and nicotine as well, making sure you're exercising, even if it's just a brief walk. Take a nap as needed. Again, shift work, take your naps. If you're not on shift work, making sure that you're not napping for more than 90 minutes and making sure that you're not napping later than 1 p.m. Trying to avoid eating, especially a heavy meal right before bed. We need our body to be done everything that it needs to do physically before we get to bed. So giving it a huge meal to digest and then trying to go to bed often makes things worse. And again, like I mentioned, making sure that we're not holding any of those really important or stressful conversations right before bed. We want to have those either well in advance of bedtime so that we're able to get to a resolution within them before we're sleeping, or coming up with a plan to have them maybe the next day. At nighttime, making sure you have that routine, your comfortable bed, no screens again, and learning what helps you to relax and actually practicing it. So we do have some treatment options for sleep problems. So we talked about cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which we already kind of went through an example of. We do have breathing and relaxation techniques. So we did a wonderful breathing exercise in the last video. That's really great before bed. We're going to do a visualization exercise here today that you're welcome to use as much as you like. There are also lots of guided relaxation videos on things like YouTube that you can use. Things like antidepressants can also be really helpful for sleeping. Antidepressants restore your circadian rhythm, they help promote sleep, and they help treat depression that can be getting in the way of you actually getting that good quality sleep. And there are other medications, of course, different sleep-related medications or pain-related medications that can help you get that sleep as well. If you do feel like a medication option might be the right one for you, again, I really do encourage you to chat with your family doctor. So we're going to go through a guided relaxation exercise here. I want to clarify that there is a difference between mindfulness meditations, or meditation in general, and relaxation. So while you do a meditation, you may feel relaxed, but just relaxing in of itself is not meditation. So meditation is often designed to help keep you in the present moment. It's geared to make you maybe think about things in a new way. So we're doing actually a lot of work, so to speak, while we're meditating. Versus relaxing, we're really just trying to do just that. We're actually trying not to work, right? We're trying to be calm. We're trying to slow our body at that point in time. So I want to clarify that if you're looking through things like on YouTube or anything like that, things that'll help you sleep, I would really encourage you to stick towards maybe the guided relaxation or visual relaxation exercises as opposed to mindfulness or meditation videos. Okay, so now we're going to go through and practice one of these guided relaxations together. So I'm going to ask you to make yourself comfortable. You can do this sitting in your chair. You can go and lay down if you like. As this one is a great one to use while you're trying to sleep, I would encourage you to lay down if you're able, but either is totally fine. Once you're there and once you're comfortable, I'm going to get you to close your eyes and just bring attention to your breath. Notice how it just goes in and out. So nice rise, fall. Notice how you don't even really need to think about it very much. Your body just knows how to breathe. Take a moment just to notice how your body breathes without trying to change it or do anything differently. Just focus on each breath. Now I'm going to get you to practice slowing your breathing just like we did before. With each breath in, I want you to count. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Out, 2, 3, 4. You can change this to a count of 3 or 5 as you need. Take a couple of breaths where you're just practicing slowing your breathing. In, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Out. 2, 3, 4. Continue to breathe slowly and smoothly, relaxing more and more with each breath. Breathe in and out. Feel yourself becoming more relaxed, sinking in to your chair, your bed, whatever you're laying on. And as you relax, I want you to create a picture in your mind. Imagine that you are lying on a blanket outside on a warm summer day. The blanket is soft on the grass next to some trees. The sun shines down warmly. It's the perfect temperature for you. And a soft breeze blows through the trees and across your face. If you look up, you see the sky above, bright and blue. See some clouds floating by, just blowing in that breeze. Picture in your mind the details of this scene. The feel of the sun and the breeze on your skin. The softness of the blanket and the grass beneath you. Notice the trees beside you, the different types. Notice that the leaves on the trees wave and turn in the wind. You can hear them rustle. Between the leaves, you're able to see the bark of the trees, which is dark with patches of moss and lighter coloring. And a few spruce trees grow between them, and you can see their branches just subtly bobbing up and down in that breeze. You can return your attention to the clouds that are passing by above you in that sky. Notice their different shapes. Notice that some are round and fluffy, while others are the long, wispy clouds, like little streaks of semi-transparent white paint just splashed across the sky. The clouds are just drifting by lazily in that breeze, slowly, smoothly floating. Notice how relaxing it is to just watch these clouds pass by. The sun shines down and it warms and relaxes you, creating a calm and sleepy feeling. While that breeze keeps you cool and comfortable. Your body relaxes bit by bit as you sink into the blanket of soft grass. You feel your muscles begin to relax, just letting go. And allowing your breathing to slow as you just rest peacefully here. If any stressful or negative thoughts arise while you lay here, you can picture just putting that thought on one of those passing clouds. And then just let it continue to float by through that sky, and eventually out of view altogether. And then return to the sights and sounds of this scene. The sound of that wind as it rustles the leaves in the trees. Perhaps a bird singing close by. Take a look at the leaves as you see them dancing and moving in that breeze. Feeling that sun shining through the trees and onto your skin. Enjoy this moment. Gazing up at this sky, watching the clouds drift by, just enjoying this beautiful moment and day. Know that you can come back to this place at any time. When you're ready to leave this peaceful place, take one last look around, paying attention to all of the details so that you're able to come back here whenever you like. And slowly begin to return your attention to the present moment. Take a deep breath in and out. Breathe in again and out. Continue to breathe smoothly and regularly. This time though, feeling your energy increase with each breath. As you breathe, allow your body to reawaken. Feel the energy flowing into your muscles. Raise your shoulders up as you breathe in and lower them as you breathe out. Feeling your muscles reawaken. Keep with you this feeling of calm and relaxation while returning to a state of wakefulness. And when you're ready, open your eyes and return to your day, feeling alert and calm. Now that you've come back from enjoying this peaceful moment away, notice how your body feels. Notice the calm. Notice how relaxed you are. Know that you can access that feeling whenever you like. Now, this type of an activity is meant to make you feel relaxed. It's meant to make you tired. And so if you're feeling like you need a nap, or maybe you need to go to bed a little bit early tonight, that is perfectly okay. Know that you can use this style of relaxation as much as you like. You're welcome to use this recording as many times as you like. Alternately, if this one wasn't quite the right picture for you or the right image for you, there are plenty more of resources online. So feel free to use things like YouTube and just look up things like guided relaxation. There's multiple apps. Any of the sleep apps often have a guided relaxation on them as well. Feel free to explore these and play with these and find the one that's going to work best for you. Now, as you move forward from this session, I want you to explore a couple things. The first being these relaxation techniques. The second being considering if there's a habit that came across in any of the basically good and bad things we can do for sleep that you maybe want to change in the upcoming week. Notice how you might change it, come up with a plan of how you might do so, and start taking action towards that. We've talked about how important sleep is today, and so I really do encourage you to take some positive action after this and see where you can make improvements in your own sleep cycle. Try out those grounding exercises the next time you're starting to feel stressed or overwhelmed. Use those senses and the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 principle to ground yourself back into the present moment. Know that you are safe where you are and that you can handle what's coming up. I hope you enjoyed this, and I sincerely hope you sleep well tonight. We'll talk again soon. Thanks.